Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, is Cameroon hurtling towards civil war? Strikes that began back in 2016 in the Anglophone regions have led to extreme violence and calls for secession. We'll take a look at how Cameroon got here and how its citizens are currently coping.
I'm Malika Bilal. We're live on YouTube, and we want to hear from all of you, especially those in our Cameroonian community. We'll examine what it will take to bring both sides to the table and how a long-lasting peace could be possible.
We want this strike to stop, for our president to talk with our English-speaking colleagues to try to restore peace in Cameroon. Since we are indivisible, we must form one, is what I can say.
The head of state will see about this trouble of the two Anglophone regions so that you can sit down and find a solution to make Cameroon to be a peaceful country as we are. Like Fakotri, we have no problem, but these things is bringing a lot of problems. So we need peace in our country. The head of state will at least see what he can do to solve the problem out so that we'll be in unity.
Cameroonians there speaking on Cameroon Day. Violence first broke out in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon in October 2016. And at that time, lawyers and teachers went on an indefinite strike, saying they were being mistreated and marginalised socially, economically and politically by the government of the Francophone majority nation. The Anglophone minority makes up about 20% of the population, and what they say is their forced assimilation has long been a source of discontent. Those protests led to calls for secession and reignited a separatist movement that was calling for the creation of the independent Republic of Ambazonia.
The conflict between the government and separatist rebels in the Anglophone region of the country is escalating, and neither side is showing signs of backing down. While the military calls the separatists terrorists, the separatists have accused the military of genocide. Human rights group Amnesty International has criticized both sides for excessive use of force.
So joining us on set, we have Edwin Ngang. He's an advisor for the Republic of Ambazonia and a community organizer for the Ambazonia People's Restoration Movement. Ilaria Alolagozi is a Lake Chad region researcher at Amnesty International.
And Jeng Menga is a Cameroonian blogger and activist. We're hoping to also be joined on the phone by Issa Shiroma Bakari, the Minister of Communications for the Government of Cameroon. He'll be speaking to us from an official engagement. Welcome to the stream, all of you. And I want to start with our community because they pitched today's show and have been for several weeks now. Two opposing perspectives. Araya here says, I live in Ambazonia, a country colonized by Cameroon, and I live in fear of being shot at for no reason. There is beyond disturbing presence of armed forces everywhere in Ambazonia, and they see civilians as foes. Now, on the other side, we got a comment from someone who also lives in that region that some call Ambazonia. This is Eni, who says, this is a huge lie. I'm here in Bamenda and civilians are scared of losing their properties and being killed or called names by secessionists if they say or do anything against them. Jeng, do you want to weigh in here? We're seeing very different points of view from people who live in the very same area. How do you see it?
I think first of all, to call these people Ambazonia is already to recognize them. And we cannot recognize something that doesn't exist. Cameroon is a sovereign country. And Ambazonia is a terrorist group. So it's normal that people living in Bamenda feel like they have been invaded by some forces coming from outside. And that's everything we can say, because only Cameroonians living abroad are calling it Ambazonia.
I would think that if he makes that statement, it will look as if he just came in from Mars. The reason why there is an English people in Cameroon is because of how we came to be. And this is exactly because the trusteeship was not terminated properly that this problem has arisen. You cannot make the claim that Cameroon is one and indivisible. That is a false statement. And that is what is going to cause the genocide that is already creeping into that region. The Republic of Ambazonia is the successor state following the constitutional dissolution of the Federal United Cameroon Republics, which was the entity that was not properly installed when the United Kingdom, as the administrating authority, and the United States failed to fulfill their obligation as per UN Article 76B.
Edwin, what date are we talking about here?
We're talking about 1984.
All right, so what I'm going to do for a moment is just keep us up to date with where we are right now.
Okay.
Malika asked you, Jack, how can there be two very different examples of what is going on? How is that even possible?
I can explain that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The reason is because there has been systematic assimilation predetermined by the Franco-Cameroon alliance ever since they started having association with the English neighbors, which is our country. When we engage in the unitary state, which was a federal Cameroon Republic, they started dismantling everything that has to do with the federation. And they have planted their agents in our society to come out and promote this false narrative that we are one and indivisible. There is a
Edwin, if I may, because we're going to get deep into history here, and I want to just keep us current. Ilaria, you may actually have some clarity for us, because we have two different, many different versions of what is going on. When you went in as Amnesty, the violence was something that you looked at, not necessarily go in, but reported on and investigated. What are you seeing?
Yes, exactly. I think the two comments points at the fact that, in fact, the ordinary people, the general population, is caught between two fires. Violence is going on from both sides, and people have been caught between a rock and a hard place, between the violations perpetrated by the security forces and the acts of violence perpetrated by the armed separatists. What we have observed on the ground is, in fact, that the violence is escalating, and especially in the last 2 months, there have been an increase in the attacks, in the reprisal attacks by the security forces when the armed separatists try to attack checkpoints or gendarmerie stations or army convoys. And violence is escalating at really an alarming pace. And this is resulting also in a humanitarian crisis, which is not making the headlines, with over 21,000 Anglophone refugees in Nigeria and more than 160,000 internally displaced in the Anglophone regions. So this shows that the situation is taking a turn for the worst, and it will get worse before it gets any better.
Eli, this is fascinating coming from the Amnesty perspective, because Malika and I were pushing Jeng and pushing Edwin to even get to a little bit of that, and they didn't talk about that. Malika, what do you have?
What's interesting, Ilaria, you mentioned the violence on both sides. I actually want to play for all of our viewers an audio comment from a freelance journalist who recently returned from Cameroon. You can see this tweet from him on my screen here. He was reporting on the political unrest for Iran News Agency, and he interviewed independent fighters. Now, we're not showing his face due to security concerns, but this is what he told the stream.
I've spent a week with a group of fighters belonging to Ambazonia defense forces in Cameroon. They've claimed killing dozens of security forces since the start of the conflict. What surprised me the most is that they used to be farmers. They had been forced to leave their homes and their crops after the Cameroonian army attacked their villages. And so they were left with only two choices: to hide in the bush or to become fighters. And so today they're facing an army that has helicopters and assault rifles and gets support from the United States and other countries, whereas most of these fighters only have old guns, and so they're left to use amulets to protect themselves from bullets, as I'm going to explain in an article due soon on Iran. Since October last year, when the conflict started, the army has been burning entire villages and killing civilians. According to one Cameroonian human rights organization, 70 villages were destroyed by the army. And in an investigation I did with the BBC, we confirmed with satellite images that at least 6 villages had been burned down since October.
So Edwin, he shows what he says is evidence of villages being burned down. He also talks about the fact that these are farmers who've now taken up arms because of this conflict. Does that resonate with what you know?
That is a true statement that I've heard from a freelance journalist, and it reflects the truth that is going on in our country today. When we stated that we have been subjugated by Cameroon, We mean it, and that covers all kinds of horrific things that can be done when people are being oppressed by the Franco-Cameroonian alliance. Right now, it has been we've detected 4 mercenaries in one of the regions in the northern parts of our country. White forces, white people with white skins. We don't know where they're coming from. They could be French legionnaires or they could be French armies. Actually, now we're fighting alongside Cameroon armies. They're pillaging villages.
We actually got a lot of tweets about people saying that we think that French mercenaries are there, international mercenaries. How are you confirming that? How do you know that?
We can only say that because this Franco-Cameroon alliance was signed in 1959, which was to ensure that the French interest in Cameroon predominates. Once oil was discovered in Ambazonia, they switched their position from not caring about the federation to fast forwarding the assimilation agenda through the annexation that we said happened in 1972 when Ahidjo dissolved the confederation. Fortunately for us, that same assembly in 1984 dissolved that union. So by operation of the law, the successor state of now the Southern Cameroon is the Republic of Ambazonia. And since then, we had laid claim that Cameroon is subjugating and occupying our country. But we have never had the international community, for instance, United Nations, to come in and complete the process of fulfilling the termination of the association, which was incompleted. Until that is done, we will never have peace in that region, because the only reason why Cameroon is interested in Ambazonia is because of the wealth that they exploit from our territory. It's not that they care about us. We have the records to prove that prior to 1972, there wasn't.
Yeah, Minister, hello, welcome. Welcome to our conversation. This is Minister Issa Chiroma Bakri. He is the Minister of Information. I know you've been listening into our conversation, Minister. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity, Madam. I am Mr. Chiroma, Minister of Communication and spokesperson of the government. I would like to express gratitude for giving me the opportunity to voice the government position as far as this political unrest in our country, in particular in the 2 regions of our nation, is concerned. I just heard my brother, a Cameroonian, who made a libelous, slanderous accusation, description of what is taking place right now, by saying that the government has recruited foreigners to come and deliver the goods. This is disrespect for our people and for our army. Madam, I would like you to know one thing. You are based in Washington. New York is some few kilometers away from Washington. I advise you to go and visit the archives of the United Nations to understand exactly what has taken place. Cameroon, in its present configuration, is the legacy handed over to the nation by the United Nations. I say by the United Nations.
Minister, I want to get some clarity of what's happening right now. I know that there is always a temptation with Cameroon to go back because it's got a deep colonial history. I'd like to keep us up to date for a moment. You are right now, am I correct in thinking, you are at the home of the US ambassador to Cameroon?
I am what, madam? Please excuse me. You see,
I believe you're at the home of the US ambassador to Cameroon. The reason I mention that is because that ambassador had this to say about the current violence and unrest in Cameroon. Have a listen to what he said. Have a listen, Minister.
I will say that, you know, there's violence on both sides. The government has committed summary executions. They are guilty of detaining people and not allowing them access to lawyers, to their families, even to visits from the Red Cross. They have been guilty of burning villages, of looting, and of general harassment of the population. On the side of the secessionists, the separatists, we've seen horrible beheadings, kidnappings of government officials, and burning of schools. So we want to stress that the United States condemns violence on both sides.
So, Minister, this is what I'm hearing. Summary executions, burning of villages, looting. This is by government backed forces. And then on the separatist side, burning of schools, beheadings and kidnappings of government officials. This is what the US ambassador to Cameroon is seeing. He feels is actually happening. How are you going to deal with that?
Thank you, Madam, for giving me this opportunity to voice a government position. We are convinced that if people of good will, of good faith, accept the law and constitution as a framework within which we can negotiate and work out a satisfactory solution for the nation, this is going to be possible. But out of constitution, out of the laws of the nation, it is impossible. What the government would like to achieve is to invite whoever in good faith can help us find the right people with whom we can discuss. You see,
who are the right people, Minister? Who are the right people? We're looking here at beheadings and burning of villages and summary executions. This is not a situation that is good for the people of Cameroon. I'm not hearing right now how you're going to deal with this. You want to pick the right people.
Listen, madam. The terrorists, the secessionist terrorists, they used to disguise themselves. They used to disguise themselves with Cameroon uniform, with our army, the uniform of our army, and to perpetrate their crime against our own people. What I am saying today is that in case such a report that the burning, the destroying of crops, when such an information is brought to the knowledge of the government, a genuine and uncomplacent inquiry and investigation.
Okay, I hear you, Minister. Please stay with us because we're rapidly running out of time. Edwin said he's not a terrorist. He says he's a restorationist.
I've heard the minister continue to refer to us as terrorists. We are restorationists. Remember that these two countries came into conscious agreement to form a union which was not completed. This is where the problem is. We cannot be talking about the symptom of the problems when the problem hasn't been addressed. Until we go back to the beginning and correct the mistakes of 1960, whereby United Nations failed to fulfill its obligation as per Article 76B when we attained sovereign state and got to be a sovereign independent country and engaged into a confederation with Cameroon, which was then destroyed by Ahidjo's totalitarian rule. We are not going to solve this problem. I hear
you, Edwin.
Yeah, so
let's just get our community in because I also want to be part of the conversation. Malika, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting, Ilaria, you're hearing this back and forth. You heard what the minister said, and of course you're hearing what Edwin said. This is a Tuba who says extrajudicial killings, burning down entire villages, shooting unarmed civilians, and forced disappearances in the southwest and the northwest. Regions must be investigated. We urge for a commission of inquiry to fully investigate these crimes. Now, of course, Amnesty is not that kind of commission. It won't conduct that kind of commission, but you did do an investigation. Talk to us about your access.
Yes, first of all, let me welcome the statement of the minister regarding the need for holding accountable those who have perpetrated crimes in the north and southwest. This is, it's a welcoming news, but at the same time, let me be a little bit skeptical because unfortunately, what we have seen in Cameroon is a long track record of abusive conduct by the security forces and as well as an entrenched culture of impunity. So far, since we have started our research work on Cameroon, very little investigations have been opened on the cases that we have documented. And we talk about hundreds of cases of enforced disappearances, systematic torture in illegal detention facilities, arbitrary arrests. And in the case of the context of the Anglophone crisis, we have also documented burning of entire villages, thanks also to the use of satellite imagery, which showed, for example, like the complete destruction of a couple of villages in the southwest regions. And we have spoken with victims and eyewitnesses and their families who told us about their dramatic stories when they fled those villages when the army came to carry out its security operations. So I think it's important to address the burning issues and indeed to address impunity, which has been one of the root causes of this crisis, and it's only fueling more violence and contributing to more crimes.
Ilaria, you made some recommendations at the end of this investigation that you did into the violence in Cameroon, violence on both sides. We have the minister on the line right now. What are the recommendations? Because he wasn't very impressed with this report at all.
Yes,
Before
indeed. I mean, like,
Madam, please. You have many statements made by many people against the government. If you do not give me enough time to answer, I will leave the debate. I have to make it clear. My country, the nation, is victim of aggression. Secessionists, they are the one who took the arm against the institution. They are the one who are perpetrating, committing the most odious crime by preventing our kids, our children from going to school. Please, when you were speaking, I didn't tell you anything. Be polite and listen to what I am saying. And I am speaking on behalf of the government.
Minister, we just have a little moment left. So Minister, let me just push you so that we can actually hear, how are you going to work on this unrest that is currently afflicting Cameroon? What is the plan?
First of all, madam, as I told you, we are ready to
it's just like asking good faith. So asking the folks
Edwin, hold tight for a minute. I would like to hear the plan going forward.
Then I will leave the debate. It doesn't matter.
Please go ahead, Minister.
Hello?
Yes, Minister. Yes, do go ahead.
Well, I was saying that, madam, there is no conflict without possibility to find a solution for all.
All right, Minister, as you can hear, we lost the Minister. He's actually...
Yes, I can hear you, madam.
All right. Minister, hold tight for a moment, because this is a struggle and this is quite painful. Malika, what do we have?
Well, you heard the minister earlier call some secessionists terrorists. That's something we've seen online as well. You don't see a lot of Francophone tweets online, but you do see Facebook posts like this: victims of Ambazonia terrorists, and this next one, no to Ambazonia and no to secessionist terrorism. Jeng, I want to give this to you because I know that you're a member of this group that has about 600 members on Facebook. What is your view?
I think here, I really want to ask a question. What is really the role of Amnesty International in all these stories? Because Amnesty International have really lost its credibility when it started supporting the Boko Haram. The country, a sovereign country like Cameroon, cannot bargain with terrorists. And it's the same thing that is happening. This is where we needed to further show on what the problem is. Can I talk, please? Can I have time to talk?
Yeah.
If we are talking here about the Cameroonian army, sovereign country, burning, we know that these terrorists have found refuge in schools. They have been burning, raping women, and Amnesty International have said that these people are using...
Do excuse me, I actually have 1 minute left in this entire show. Viewers, if you're watching this, you can hear the difficulty that we're having to even try and discuss this in any way that gives us any clarity.
I think the problem
I want to go back to Malika because I'm feeling that I'm getting clarity from the community and it's difficult with you debating and counter-debating against each other. Malika, what are you seeing?
I'll end with two tweets from YouTube, two comments from YouTube. Thomas says he finds it interesting that a peaceful protest by lawyers and teachers has led to what we're seeing here today. And another person, Atam, says the core reason why the French Republic of Cameroon fights to keep southern Cameroon is because of the resources. The union has never been legal or in good faith, thus they know and have always known this.
I think I need to say something here.
And we need to say thank you so
can I
much for
reply?
being with us. And Eulalia, I know you need a right of reply, and we will do that online because we've left some threads hanging. Luckily, at AJ Stream is our Twitter handle. Our conversations always continue there. Edwin, Eulalia, Jeng, and also Minister of Communications for Cameroon. Thank you for joining us. Our conversation continues online. See you soon.